Sometime in the fall of my junior year, I found this book, Haunted Places of Southern Indiana, at the library book sale. It was kind of moldy looking, but I bought it anyway. My roommate grew up down here, and I thought he might like it. Sure enough, a couple days later, I came back from class, and he was reading it. He was all excited about this, one of the stories in particular. Apparently one of the haunted houses was in a little town that was only like 15 miles away. He wanted to drive out there and try to find the place, and I was done with class for the day, so I went along. When we finally found the house, which was completely out in the middle of nowhere, it really gave me the creeps. I'm sure it would have even if I hadn't read the story behind it, but I brought the book along and read during the drive. Apparently the guy who built the place had murdered his wife and 2 kids with a hammer and then buried them in the cellar. A few days later, he hung himself. Obviously, this was a huge deal back in 1930 or whatever, so the house stood empty for quite a while. But several years later, another family moved in, husband, wife, and 2 kids, and apparently stayed for less than 3 weeks and then left in the middle of the night. They said they'd been hearing things like just funny sounds since the day they moved in, but tried to ignore them. One night, though, the mom woke up and heard kids whispering. She went to the kids' room to tell them to shut up, but when she opened the door, she saw they were asleep, and she could still hear the whispering. She followed the sound and found it was coming up through a heating grate, up from the cellar. Another family moved in a few years after that, and it was pretty much the same story. And they were the last people to live there as of the time that this Haunted Places book was written. We found the door to the cellar around back. Matt was all hot to go down there, but the light was fading, and we hadn't brought any flashlights. He was like, "Man, we have to do a Ouija board down there sometime." And I was like, "Yeah, cool," but I figured he'd forget about it. He was a flighty sort of guy. But he didn't forget about it, because a few days later I was riding back out there with a Ouija board in my lap. He had talked this girl, Sarah, that he knew into going out there, and she had talked her roommate into it, and that was pretty much that. On the way out to pick him up, he was like, "Dude, don't say anything about the murders, man. They'd be freaked out." And, I was like, kind of gave him some crap for it, but, frankly, I didn't want anything to jeopardize the outing either. I was kind of hot for the roommate. Amy was her name. Anyway, so we picked him up and drove out there. Along the way, we were talking about our various ghost theories. Sarah thought that when people died suddenly with no understanding of what had happened to them, their spirits would hang around the place that they had died instead of moving on. She asked if we knew if anyone had died in the place or anything, but we just said we didn't know. She also filled us in on proper channeling procedure. She was kind of the new agey type and seemed to know what she was talking about. She brought along candles and a metronome, and which is like the beat keeping thing that musicians use. And she also had this book that had a spiel in it that if you had it read to you, was supposed to put you in a channeling trance. So finally, we got out to the place, and immediately upon exiting the car, I was totally creeped out again. It had been spooky in the daylight, but at night it was just bad news. Amy actually didn't seem too pumped to go in, and I could definitely have been talked out of it, but no one really said anything. We got around back to the cellar, and down we went. Matt spread out a blanket, and we all took our places. Sarah had decided that Matt should read from the channeling book, and that she and I would do the Ouija board, and Amy would write down whatever got spelled out. Sarah started the metronome going, and we put our hands on the little plastic thing, and Matt started reading. At first, the stuff from the book seemed kind of cheesy, but between that and the metronome, after a minute, I could definitely feel myself zoning out. I remember thinking, man, this is actually working, and after that, everything was pretty much a blur. At first I didn't know what was going on. I just felt really out of it, really just cold and weird. Then I realized that what had snapped me out of it was Amy screaming. She'd run out of the cellar and left the notepad behind. At first it just looked like gobbledygook, but when I figured out what it said, I just got goosebumps all over and just ran out of there too. We didn't really talk much on the way home. I saw the girls around town a few times after that, but didn't really talk to them then either. I went back to the place a couple years later, actually, and I was kind of hoping that maybe the lightning had struck it and it had burned down, but there it stood. Part of me wanted to go in to make sure, I don't know, that something really was going on in there. I thought about it for a second and then just got the hell out of there. If I had the guts, I'd burn it down myself.